Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, transforming the way people think and work so their organizations can thrive. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and today's episode is cut from another podcast of which I am the co-host, The Soul of Enterprise, which is also sponsored by Sage. The Soul of Enterprise is dedicated to belief that business has a spiritual, though not necessarily religious, component. I hope you enjoy this excerpt. If you do, please visit www.thesoulofenterprise.com for more.
And Don, I wanted to ask you on this consciousness topic, you seem to be fairly optimistic or believe that we can. Can AI create real consciousness?
Yes and no. It depends on how you're thinking about the whole problem. So the standard way of thinking about it is that, again, space-time and matter are fundamental. And if you have the right complexity in matter, the right kinds of circuits with the right kinds of computational structures and so forth, that somehow you'll get the right kind of complexity in those circuits and consciousness will emerge. And this is, again, part of the view, for example, in which we say that we know that machines can be conscious because the brain is a machine. The brain is a carbon-based machine. And so here we have a concrete example of a carbon-based machine that's creating consciousness. So why shouldn't a silicon-based machine also create consciousness? And the reason as we've talked about, I think that that's not right is that the very language of space and time, according to evolution by natural selection, the very language of space and time is the wrong language to describe objective reality. Whatever it is that has true causal powers is not in space and time. So physical objects like neurons and circuits and software are a useful hack that we use to manipulate the world, but they're not themselves the ultimate nature of reality. So if we're thinking about AI and consciousness in the framework of somehow AI will somehow give rise to consciousness as an emergent property of these pre-existing physical systems, then I think that whole way of thinking about it is just wrong. On the other hand, if we think about space and time and physical objects as our headset, and our headset gives us access, portals, as you might say, to consciousness. So for example, Ron, I'm, through Zoom, I have a picture of you on my screen. And so it's not you and it's not your consciousness, but it is an interface that I'm using. And that interface has given me genuine access to your consciousness. I mean, if you look at me, if you look disgusted, I could tell that you're disgusted. If you look happy, I can tell that something about your consciousness. So my interface, my headset has given me a portal into your consciousness. So that changes how we think about the AI consciousness question. Instead of saying, could the right circuits and software somehow get complicated enough to create consciousness, the question is, could we understand our headset, space-time as a headset, so well that we can reverse engineer it? And once we reverse engineer our headset, could we actually open up new portals in our headset to consciousnesses, right? I already have a portal right now into Ron's consciousness. I call it the face and body of Ron that I'm seeing. But that's just my icon, right? If I close my eyes, my picture of Ron's face and body disappear, but Ron's consciousness doesn't disappear. Just my portal has disappeared. So the idea would then be if we can understand consciousness on its own terms, how it maps into space and time as a headset, we could reverse engineer the headset, open new portals. The technology that we create may look like AI. So we may end up having things that look like artificial intelligence with silicon and so forth, but it wouldn't be a bottom-up silicon creating the consciousness. It would be instead a different technology altogether, reverse engineering our headset to open up portals into consciousness.
We've had George Gilder on the show, and he wrote Life After Google, and he's kind of an economist, and he's got an information theory of capitalism, which I find absolutely fascinating. He talks about some of the same things. Some of your work overlaps. And I just wanted to get your reaction to this, because he doesn't think that AI can or could create consciousness. And he wrote this, the blind spot of AI is that consciousness does not emerge from thought. It is the source of it. Mm-hmm. The Oracle programmer must be outside.
Yes. Now, I agree. When I'm saying that consciousness is fundamental, I'm absolutely agreeing with him on that. And so this really points to the critical fundamental assumption that's dividing the two camps. The critical assumption is space-time and matter the fundamental nature of reality or not? That's the big one. And to to say no is a huge, huge move, right? The story right now is the Big Bang happened 13.8 billion years ago. Space-time came into existence. Energy and matter were there. There was no life, much less no consciousness, for hundreds of millions, billions of years. So in that picture, space-time is fundamental. Consciousness has to emerge in that picture as some complex outcome of matter. But then if we're going to go this other direction, say consciousness is fundamental, we have a lot of work to do to be taken seriously, right? Because the space-time physical model has been wonderful for 400 years. It has done everything for us, and it has really worked. Right now, this consciousness is fundamental idea is a big promissory note that hasn't been cashed out at all. So, if I were to, bet my money right now, you should bet your money on the physicalists, right? Because they're the ones that can explain everything. So that's where we are right now. It's always open to say, look, well, we haven't figured it out yet, but we'll figure out how neurons create consciousness. We'll figure out. I don't think that they will. I think that the fact that evolution by natural selection says the probability is zero that space-time and matter is the right language means that we won't get that. But we'll see.
Review and subscribe by searching your podcast player of choice for Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.